Let's look at oxide, hydroxide, and water. Which of these has the least charge density? The more dispersed charge. If you look at these, hydrogen doesn't really make much difference in terms of size, right? So the size are almost the same. So which one has the most charge density? You need charge to size ratio, right? Or let's answer this question. Which has the least charge density? Let's see. Water, right? This is -2, -1, 0. Okay? Divided by the same size, more or less the same size, water has the least charge density, right? So water has the least charge density. So since it has the least charge density among these three, which species has the strongest conjugate acid? The least charge density means that's the most stable, right? That's the most stable base. So that means it's the weakest base. So which of these three has the strongest conjugate acid? What are the conjugate acids for this? What's the conjugate acid for oxide? It's going to be one more H and one charge higher. So hydroxide, right? What's the conjugate acid for hydroxide? One more H, one charge higher. So that's H2O. What's the conjugate base of water? Hydronium. So of these three conjugate acids, which one is the strongest? A, B, or C? Ready? It should be a no-brainer, even if you didn't know the arguments behind it, right? What's the strongest acid of these three? Hydronium. Very good. Okay? So you can see the explanation there works. Water, among these three, has the least charge density. It's the most stable base. It is the weakest base. And since it's the weakest base, its conjugate acid among these three would be the strongest. So which one is a better proton acceptor? Hydroxide or H2O? A or B? Which one is a better proton acceptor? What's proton accepting called? Being acidic or being basic? Okay, so the correct answer. This is essentially asking which one's a better base, right? Which one's a stronger base? And a stronger base would be hydroxide. The least stable base is the one that's more likely to accept a proton. Okay, so which one's the better proton donor? Hydroxide or H2O? Better proton donor would be H2O. Very good. Okay, now comment about leveling effect. Again, hydroxide is the strongest base that can exist in water. Okay, so anytime you have something like oxide, we said oxide is a stronger base than hydroxide. So what happens in water, there's so many water molecules there, and so what happens to your hydroxide is just it picks up a proton right away and gives you hydroxide ions. So anytime you put oxide in water, it immediately converts into hydroxide. The strongest base that can exist in water would be your hydroxide. Okay? What's the Kb of hydroxide? That's going to be what? Kw divided by the Ka of, what's the conjugate acid of hydroxide? Water, right? Hydroxide, the conjugate acid, one more proton, would be H2O. So it's 10 to the negative 14. What was the Ka of water? Let me go back. Ka of water is Kw over 55, right? So 10 to the negative 14 over 55. So the Kb of hydroxide is 55. So the Ka of the strongest acid in water is 55. The Kb of the strongest base in water is also 55. Okay? The Ka of water is 10 to the negative 14 over 55.